This is Tamor Hussain reading for reviewer Stephen Petit. Metroid Dread is a triumphant return for the iconic bounty hunter Samus Aran, in large part because it remains true to its lineage. Like seeing an old friend for the first time in many years, Metroid Dread is charmingly familiar, an old school side-scroller with a modern look and feel. Dread plays similarly to Samus Returns for the Nintendo 3DS. Developer Mercury Steam brought over the excellent counterattack mechanic to Dread, as well as the manual-sighted aiming system that gives you pinpoint control over beam shots and missiles. While Dread is pleasantly familiar mechanically, Samus has never felt this good to control. With a pep in her step and tight controls, Metroid Dread is silky smooth in motion, and an absolute joy to play. Utilizing the same 2.5D art style from Samus Returns, Metroid Dread offers crisper, more detailed visuals that help make each of the locales and their enemies stand out. Rocky tunnels, molten caverns, industrial compounds, underwater depths. Metroid Dread is filled with the distinct level designs that have marked the series' storied history. Improved animations, especially from Samus herself and bosses, enhance the overall presentation, while adhering to the signature art direction and style the series is known for. Metroid Dread has been billed as the swan song of the current Samus saga. Bringing a story arc that began 35 years ago to a satisfying close was always going to be a tall task, but Dread definitely untangles the series' web of narrative mysteries to deliver an affecting tale that features some of the best writing and atmospheric storytelling in the series' history. To get there, Dread kicks off with Samus arriving at a destination to investigate a mission gone awry, only to soon find herself devoid of her decked out suite of abilities. This time it's planet ZDR, where the Federation has sent a robotic task force called Emmy to search for evidence that the X-Parasite lived on after the events of Metroid Fusion. Samus quickly encounters a powerful Chozo warrior who knocks her unconscious. She awakens deep beneath the planet's surface, far away from her ship, with only her power beam and a batch of missiles. Dread flips the script by forcing Samus to travel up and back to her ship, but in practice this change isn't a meaningful shakeup. As you'd come to expect, Dread requires frequent backtracking, so you're moving in all different directions throughout the adventure. One notable new feature that makes both exploration and combat different than usual from the start is Samus's ability to slide. This allows her to access areas previously only accessible via Morph Ball, as well as provide a nimble way to dodge attacks. The Morph Ball is still needed in many instances though. The winding tunnel system in each of the themed locales inevitably leads Samus into trippy portals signifying the start of an Emmy zone. Surprising no one, the robots sent to the planet to investigate have been reprogrammed to do what all well-intentioned robots secretly want to do: kill. Emmy zones introduce stealth to the Metroid formula, and it's a mostly positive addition. The Emmy, which crawl on all fours along walls, reconfiguring physically to chase you through spaces you'd think they can't navigate, are positively creepy, inspiring the dread the title alludes to. If an Emmy spots you, a chase sequence commences, and if you aren't able to outrun it, it can be instant game over. You have a very brief window to execute a perfect counter, which stuns the Emmy and gives you an opportunity to slide under it and escape, but the timing is extremely tight, and the window seems to vary to ensure escape after capture feels like a stroke of fortune. Pretty early on you unlock a useful cloaking ability that makes you invisible, which can be used to evade Emmy and pass through motion locked doors. But like the counter, it isn't enough to trivialize the Emmy. Nevertheless, exploring an Emmy patrolled zone can be nerve-wracking, but it's never nearly as terrifying as it could have been, mostly because the stakes are low. If you get caught, you simply get sent back to the entrance. Emmys wind up as more of a cumbersome obstacle at times, mainly because the map layer often forces you to zigzag through Emmy zones to make progress and backtrack. Coming across an Emmy guarding the exact exit you're searching for can be tiresome, especially since the encounters are mostly the same throughout. In isolation, Emmys bring a well-designed new element of gameplay into the Metroid fold, but in the grand scheme of things they can get in the way of what Metroid is all about: careful and thorough exploration. Inside each zone is a floating Orwellian eyeball mini-boss that, once you're able to find, can be destroyed to receive a one-use Omega Cannon. The process for killing an enemy has 2 steps: exposing its head by shooting away the shield with a machine gun, and then charging up the cannon to deliver the kill shot. The kill sequence is a clever puzzle of sorts, which is presented from an over-the-shoulder camera perspective. You have to find a clear enough space in the zone to shoot the enemy at a distance and make it vulnerable. Otherwise, you have to start the process over from a different spot. With each successive enemy encounter, the process for killing them becomes slightly trickier thanks to environmental obstacles that force you to think and act quickly. Despite the intermittent annoyance, the moment-to-moment gameplay involving enemies is still enjoyable, even if it feels somewhat at odds with Metroid's core DNA. Thankfully, enemies aren't an overbearing presence. They are more of an aside. The vital framework of Metroid is still intact, and Dread handles exploration and backtracking better than any other game in the series thus far. Dread feels like a more adventurous take on Fusion's cadence. You still get mission updates from the AI Adam in network centers, but very rarely does it tell you exactly where to go. Instead, there's a clever nudge in the right direction while still giving you the freedom to explore. Though I did get lost for a brief bit twice throughout the adventure, once I figured out where to go, I started to recognize the subtle suggestions in both writing and environment that point you in the right direction. Dread doesn't hold your hand. It feeds you drips of information and new abilities to allow you to gradually explore previously unreachable areas. And exploring is the name of the game here. Dread has more secrets to uncover than its predecessors. There are missile packs all over the place, including upgrades that add a whopping 10 missiles to your ammunition capacity. Dread might actually have too many missile packs, as I eventually had so many that I didn't even need to be concerned with being accurate with my shots during late game boss battles. Energy tanks on the other hand remain critical finds. In addition to full energy tanks, Mercury Steam has added energy tank pieces. 4 make a full energy tank. Quadrants of the map with hidden collectibles flash after you visited them to tell you there's something to be found, but not in a way that makes finding upgrades any less rewarding. Speaking of the in-game map, it's deliciously detailed, marking every single location where you picked up or saw an upgrade, as well as points of interest and doors that require specific weapons to open. You can highlight specific icons as well as drop pins at spots you want to circle back to. While the map can get a tad busy as you make significant progress, it does help make the backtracking, even after you finish the story, a worthwhile and engaging endeavor. Of course, exploration is tied to Samus's abilities, and Dread features a plethora of upgrades, old and new. There are more than 20 suit, weapon and ability upgrades in Dread, and almost all of them are required to fully explore the map. For instance, the Varia suit allows Samus to withstand heat in fiery areas, while the Wide Beam opens certain hatches and moves large boxes. It's not uncommon to find multiple upgrades in an hour. Your means of exploring evolves quickly, consistently giving you more reasons to retrace your steps and voyage to new sections. That said, because of this constant barrage of new upgrades, it sometimes feels like you barely make use of your newly acquired gadgets. This is especially the case for beam upgrades, which replace your existing beam. One of the new Morph Ball gizmos is only really required once, immediately after finding it. So sometimes it can feel like Dread really suffers from a gluttony, due to uneven pacing of unlocks that clutters late game sections. Dread's handful or so of locales are wonderfully designed to test both your platform and combat skills, and each has its own stable of enemies that pack a hearty punch. Samus Returns really elevated Metroid's combat with counters, and Dread continues that. Many enemies, from flying monsters to hulking land beasts, have an attack that can be countered, and successfully slaying a monster following a countered attack drops more health or missile resources, rewarding you for making use of this vital mechanic. Dread adds to the series' history of great boss fights with some of the most daunting duels of Samus's bounty hunting career. The best boss battles, like the showdown with a chained up larger-than-life Kraid, make you feel small and powerless at first, tasking you with figuring out how to evade an onslaught of attacks, timing counters, and laying into the beasts with a flurry of missiles. Dread does sometimes fall into the same rut as Samus Returns with repetition of mini-bosses, albeit not such to an extreme degree. More than anything else, Metroid Dread feels like going back to a place of comfort after a long time away. Though the gameplay is refined and new features have been added to the mix, Dread sticks closely to the formula of its predecessors. In the end, for long-time fans like myself, that's probably for the best. There's nothing to dread here. We're home again.